So today the squirrel I'm chasing are independently addressable LEDs. So I know that we've been playing with the Shelly RGB W2. Super fun. Still love it. It's still in my living room in what I would call production use. Like it's kind of permanently got a home in my living room to control that RGB LED strip. But that RGB LED strip, every LED has to be the same color all the time. I can't choose one LED to be one color and one LED to be another color, which is fine for my use in there. But man, it'd be cool to really understand how these work, not only for fun Christmas lights outside of the house, but also on our Christmas tree, because the lights on that tree, on our tree specifically, are out. I replaced about 75 bulbs this past Christmas, like genuinely, because I didn't know which one it was. They're old incandescent bulbs. I love the way the incandescent bulbs look, but I thought if I'm going to have to replace them with LEDs, at least make it fun. So that's why I started this project, and I'm hoping to really be thoroughly vested to really understand it by Christmas. So the way I'm controlling these is through what's called a NodeMCU. Now these are extremely cost effective, especially if you just get the one little container or the one little chip circuit device. But I will say there is a reason why Dr. Z's is selling out of his Dig Unos that are significantly more expensive than this. But they come with all kinds of extra things that I thought, I don't need any of that. That's just like extra stuff. I'm just playing with it on my workbench. I need, oh my goodness, I need those things that his device comes with. So I'll probably be buying one of those and giving a little review of that. But realistically, he probably does better reviews of that and better instructions. But, maybe coming from someone else that's not financially vested in that, it'd be good to hear someone else's opinion. But I can say this is super fun. This is really neat. So basically what this is, what a NodeMCU is, it's not an LED controller. It's a wireless Arduino, basically. It's kind of like you can run code on this and connect it to Wi-Fi. And you can basically have like a little web server running on it, and it can send and receive data over the GPIO pins. And it's crazy advanced for how small and cheap these things are. So in fact, I got these for whatever's on the screen. And because they were so cheap, I went ahead and bought a pack of cheap breadboards. And so let's get started. So obviously this one's already working. This one I've already flashed a couple times to play with, and it's running a different version of the software. So let's just start from scratch. So I'm going to unplug everything here. And I'm going to turn off my power supply, so I don't have any voltage at all whatsoever coming out of anything, going into anything. We'll set this all off to the side. And I have a brand new, still in the wrapper package. And by the end of this video, the goal is we will have this set up on my Wi-Fi network with these lights plugged into it, and it will be able to control them. Seems easy enough. So let's start at the very beginning, which is if you don't have the proper power supply, you can, like me, have the improper power supply. For me, I got an old ATX power supply. Those of you who have worked on computers may recognize this. And some people will put like a little paper clip or a jumper wire to short out the green and black wire. I just soldered them together and put heat shrink tubing on it. Not the best idea for a lot of power supplies, but mine has a power switch on it. So I can just kill power completely to it and restore power pretty easily. Warranty void if removed. I'm never going to remove that sticker. I think my warranty's voided by cutting these things. So there's that green and black wire. I've basically grounded that green wire, which is the signal wire to turn it on. And now I can just plug whatever I want into these. And the important thing for my purposes are the red wires are 5 volt and the black wires are ground. That's all I'm using for this project because the NodeMCU is 5 volt and I chose 5 volt LEDs specifically because I could power the controller and the lights from the same power supply. Smarter people would get 12 volt lights, but I'm not smarter people. So now that we have the power supply squared away, we need to actually program the NodeMCU itself. So the first thing we're going to do is show off that I got a maker knife because they're pretty neat. I'm going to do that by opening this package. There we go. So now that we have the NodeMCU out of the package, you can see that it's really simple. There's not a whole lot to it, but it does come with this little handy USB port. So you can easily connect it to your computer and flash it. I don't know if this foam conducts electricity, so I'll take it off to flash it. So the first step we're going to do is grab the handiest, closest micro USB cable. So micro USB, micro USB. Okay, it's in there. And this is how I plug them into my laptop. First try. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to download WLED. So I'm just going to go to releases. There's release 0.12. Okay. And I'm choosing the ESP8266.bin because I have an ESP8266 card, a little board right here. And so I'm going to download that. I'm not downloading the 1M or 2M because I only have one of these, not 1 or 2 million. I have no idea what that is. There's a really great page right here on which binary should I use. I'm not smart enough to read that. I'm just going to go for it. So the next thing I need to do is install some drivers. I don't remember where I got the drivers, but they're already installed. So I think your computer might just recognize the NodeMCU. But maybe I'll try and find those drivers and link them down below. But if your computer does not see your NodeMCU, it might be because you don't have the drivers. So check out the description below. There might be links to the drivers that I used. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this ESPEasyFlasher because it's the one that worked for me. So all you do is over on the right there's releases. There's one release, serial speed, and I downloaded the zip file. After downloading that zip file, I went ahead and extracted them into a folder. So I'm going to take this file that we just downloaded and put it in the same folder as my ESP flash tool or EasyFlasher or whatever this is. And now I am going to run flash ESP8266 and there's no COM port to select. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the 2-hour step I took last time of troubleshooting and going through 20 different ways to fix this issue, and instead I'm going to unplug this cable and get a different USB cable. Look at that. Check it out. So it still looks pretty much the same. There's really no difference. However, now if I close this program, run it again, Now it says COM3. So it totally found this thing. So something important to note is these cables look the exact same. I mean, when I looked at them before, they looked like they had all their pins on both sides. So it didn't look like it was just a charging cable, but it is in fact just a charging cable. The way you can tell the difference is by trying to flash an Arduino for 2 hours. And if that doesn't work, then it's probably just a charging cable. That's what I did. So under firmware, it shows me that binary file because I just moved it into the same folder. The file has to be in this folder for that to work. And then I'll just click flash. Oh, it failed. Are the settings correct? I thought they were. Do I have to like press flash? No. Okay. Let's try, instead of 115, try 9600. I legit just did this. Like, just did this. Okay, I'm going to try this. Just in case, I'm going to rename this file and remove the parentheses and space. Just in case, because I seriously just did this. That's totally what it was. It was the space, I bet. Or the parentheses, you never know. So it looks like this particular tool wasn't escaping some invalid characters, which, you know what? That's no big deal. It's a binary file we're sending over serial. It's okay to not allow spaces and special characters in the file name. So this is now flashing the firmware on this. Once that's done, hey, it says flash complete. So now we have this, it's running WLED, there's a bright blue light. That's pretty cool. So how do we get this to actually connect to my Wi-Fi? There's a couple ways, but the way that I'm going to do it is there is a WLED Wi-Fi network that little guy just created. So I am going to connect to it. I'm gonna cancel. So simply by connecting to it, I didn't even need to give it a password or anything. Then I can go to Wi-Fi settings and put in my network password. I'm going to leave this blank for DHCP. And maybe I'll give it a fancy name. So we'll go ahead and name it WLED-3, because this is the third one. And I'm going to fill the rest of this out off camera. Okay, so I just click save and it says Wi-Fi settings are saved. I don't know if that actually worked, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my Wi-Fi back to my main, and I'm going to use a tool called Advanced IP Scanner. I'm going to scan for stuff. I don't know if this is going to even give me or not, because I don't really have a way to frame this. So now what I'm doing is I'm scanning my network to see if I can find this new WLED3. Okay, so I don't see it on my Wi-Fi, so I'm going to reset it. Let me give it a few seconds, and then I'm going to scan again. I wonder if I type in WLED. Will it only show me the WLEDs? And it found it. It totally just found it. So I am going to right click on it, go to Tools and HTTP. The other way to do this is by simply going to a web browser and typing in that IP address. But there we go. We have an interface. Now the question is, what do we do with this? I've got my NodeMCU connected to my Wi-Fi, but how do I actually control LEDs? How do I even power the LEDs? Well, I'm glad you asked. So a long time ago, I thought I was going to run all new cabling for some fancy controllers for my sprinkler system. So I bought this 7-conductor wire right here. And basically it's 18 gauge, there we go, 18 gauge sprinkler wire. And it's really cool because even though I realized I am terrible at lawn maintenance, and we live in the desert, so we got rid of the sprinkler system, it gives me a ton of this 18 gauge wire. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take one of these cheap breadboards and I'm going to unplug this. Okay, oh no, it's disconnected. And I'm going to wish I had some way to see this better. But basically I'm lining up the holes so that I have a line of ports or holes, I don't know what you call it, on either side. And I'm just going to kind of slowly work its way down until it's pretty flush, just to make sure I'm making a good connection with the contacts inside the breadboard. So now what I'm going to do is go back to my power supply over here and get this some power without a USB cable. So get rid of this USB cable. Get rid of some of this packaging and whatnot. And I'm going to choose some red and white wires. So I'm going to very carefully plug in this red wire over here on voltage in, which on my breadboard is line 15 because I plugged the first pin in on row 1. So row 15 for me is voltage in, but you can really tell because it says voltage in right there. Trust me. Now I'm going to plug that into one of the red lines. Then I'll grab a white cable, plug it into the ground GND port right here. This is the first time I've used this breadboard, so it's very tight. And then I'm going to plug that into one of these black lines in here. This is really not the way to do this. Please don't consider this part of the, like, hey, you should be powering your lights this way. And now I'm going to do the same thing. So I've got power to the board, but I also need power to the lights. So what I'm going to do is plug into the next black one, and on my receive in, now this is super important. You cannot send the signal through the end of it. It's like through the out portion. You can only send the signal to the lights through the in portion for the signal. So voltage, you can put voltage anywhere you want on the line. In fact, it has, this particular strand has these 2 extra wires, so you can add voltage, wherever you need to. You can inject the power. So I happen to know that this female end of the connector is where it goes in, and the way you can tell is because I tried it on the other side and it didn't work. That's really all I know. So what I'm going to do is on this cable, there is, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's a black dotted line on here which represents ground on this side. So I'll plug that in all the way on the left. Okay, and now I'm going to grab another red line. I find it crazy helpful to use the same colors for the same, like when you're delivering voltage, to make sure that you're using the same color scheme throughout the project. So I'm just going to put that in the far right on the other side, because you can see inside the LED where the positive and negative are. It's just going to be impossible to see on the camera, but trust me, in real life with a magnifying glass, you can figure it out. Getting the voltage, you know, the 5 volt versus ground correct is very important. Now all that's left is the signal wire, something to tell for this to be able to control these LEDs. So I have this orange cable right here, and I know that it is D4. Let's see, can I zoom in? I can zoom in, check that out. So I know that it is D4 right there. So that lines up with port 5 on this breadboard. And I'm going to effortlessly just push that in. There we go. And now I'll do the same and push it in here. And now we're good to go. I should be able to turn on the power and get my NodeMCU and lights up and running. So I'm going to flip the switch on this, and there we go. I have lights. And something that you may notice, if I could zoom out even more, is half my lights don't work. So let's fix that. I'm over here. I'm going to refresh this page just to make sure. So here's my WLED, and if you see, I can move it over to red. Ooh, that's not working. I can move it over to green. Well, that doesn't work either. I can move it to blue. Kind of. So let's fix all these problems, at least those two so far. If I go here to config, I'm going to go to LED preferences. And I am going to make sure, okay, so really I should have verified 5 volt to begin with. Total LED count is 30. Well, I have a strand of 50 right here, so I'm going to change that to 50 and click save. There we go. They're all back. So we'll go back to LED preferences. And if I go to the color order right here, I see that it says GRB, but I know that these are RGB. So I'm going to say RGB, click save. Now, if I choose red, it goes to red. Green goes to green, and blue, and it goes to blue. Now I can tell that I still have a signal issue. There's something wrong with the commands being sent to these LEDs. But we'll figure that out on a future episode. For now, I'm going to look at some of these color presets. Let's see. I am not sure what those do. So I'm going to go to effects instead. So if I choose Android, ooh, it makes them go from one end to the other. That's kind of neat. So there we go. We're moving the lights from one side to the other. That's kind of cool. I like it. There are all kinds of fun effects. BPM is, if you had these strung out, it would look more like it's waving back and forth, which is kind of cool. I don't know why it's not at least kind of working. I'll turn the brightness down on these and see if that helps at all. No, that's way too dim. Effect speed, we'll move that down a little bit. Nope, you can still kind of see it. Chase rainbow. The flickering really kills it. And I don't know what's going on with the flickering. It just doesn't make sense to me. What's weird is if I rock this back and forth, it's not flickering. It's totally a signal wire issue. And one thing that I heard was that it's because of the length of the wire. So the distance between the controller and the lights. And so here's my solution. Oh, and the gauge of the wire. So here I have some 18 gauge wire, and that's a pretty short wire. So let's plug that in instead. So I'm going to unplug, and this is kind of fun, unplug the cable. And when I do that, it's going to freeze everything where it is because it's not receiving any new instructions. So let's get it some new instructions. So I'm going to go back to this line right there. I'm going to unplug the middle port on this and see if I can get all of this to fit. It's a terrible idea to do it while it's all powered on. Don't do that. That doesn't look good. So now for some reason they've all lit up white. I'm going to hit reset and try and change these. There we go. There's fire. It's kind of fun. Fireworks. Okay, and there we go. This looks like it kind of works. And this definitely works better than either of the other two NodeMCUs that I used. One of them, I even tried soldering on a wire. And if anything, it just damaged the solder on the board itself. Pin D4 there does not have much solder on it. So yeah, I don't recommend trying to solder it directly onto the existing solder if you don't know what you're doing, like I don't know what I'm doing. But there you go. I mean, we got it to work, and actually that does look like it's working using the small jumper wire straight to this. I don't know why my other boards didn't work this smoothly. But I will say what I have been told is it's because this board is sending out a kind of like a 3-volt signal to all of this, and it really needs to have a 5-volt signal in order to go any reasonable distance. You would need something to repeat that signal at a higher voltage. And the two options, the two common options, are a logic level something. So in a future video, we'll talk about how we can solve this problem and still have the lights, like maybe have the controller here and the lights on the other end of the room. That's actually what I eventually want to do, is I really want to have a Wi-Fi controller with a long line, maybe a bunch of this stuff between the power supply, the controller, and the lights, so that I can have the controller maybe somewhere out of the weather and the lights somewhere outside. So I'll be going over that in a future episode. And once we get the control smooth like it is now, then we're going to go ahead and jump into how can I program this. So this is great. I'm able to use these presets, but maybe I want to make my own. Maybe I want to send a voice command to set a timer. I'll be honest, I might want to be able to tell my Echo computer Earl Grey hot, and then have it start an LED controlled timeline to let me know when my Earl Grey tea is done. These are all things totally doable with Home Assistant, NodeMCU, Node-RED, and a little bit of free time and energy to chase squirrels. So I hope this was exciting for you. I hope this kind of sparks some interest, because for me, figuring out how to get the NodeMCU working was the majority of the battle. So now that we have independently controllable LEDs that I can manage with my NodeMCU, I think the next several episodes are probably going to be centered around how can I customize this? What can I do to maybe turn this into a timer with a progress bar, or write my own animations without like completely coding everything from scratch. So that's it. That's how to set up a NodeMCU with some independently addressable RGB LEDs. I'll put links to everything that I used in the description. Leave a comment below if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see me do with this. Thanks for watching.